Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Michael Morgan, music director of the Oakland Symphony, and I would be very remiss if I did not share the very first guest conductor at the inaugural Sphinx competition and also the first maestro of the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra. Michael Morgan, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
And so also I should share that you also serve as kind of curator and host for Currents, which is a new series of the San Francisco Symphony, one of our awesome creative partners for Arts Engines. And so I thought I'd actually kind of maybe just start right there because I was really curious, a lot of new initiatives have kind of come about in the last year and a half, either in part or had been planned pre-pandemic. And so just wondering if you could share with us a little bit about Currents and kind of how it came about and what its impact is.
Well, Currents, the San Francisco Symphony came to me to ask me to basically do some of the things we've been doing over here at the Oakland Symphony in terms of connecting to different communities within our larger community. So in the first four that I did, there was one on jazz, one on hip hop, one on music of Mexico, and what was the fourth one? Chinese music. And this is something at Oakland Symphony we've been doing for over a decade of notes from various places. And so we have a concert every year that's devoted to some group that's underrepresented in the audience. And now the San Francisco Symphony is going after the same sorts of things. In fact, they are making all sorts of initiatives to just expand their audience and expand their just reach into the Bay Area beyond just the classical audience, which of course they have a worldwide classical audience.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, and this aspect is really interesting. And so we have a lot of, orchestras who tune in to Arts Engines and are looking to say, oh, are these types of things that maybe we should emulate? So in terms of kind of developing, how does it kind of fit into a season? So how have you both at Oakland and San Francisco been able to incorporate this type of cross-genre work into a season?
Well, here in Oakland, of course, we haven't had the chance to do it yet in San Francisco because we've been in lockdown. I mean, I had a concert scheduled with them that was a very interesting program that they have already rescheduled for February of next year. So they are very grateful to them for doing that. But over here, what we've been doing is basically, as I say in article after article, our underlying question, our animating question is who is not here? And so we look around our community and we say, who is not here? And is there anything that we can do to get them here? And so from that, we just started picking off various neighborhoods, various communities, and doing not so much an entire concert, although sometimes when we did notes from Mexico, it had to be the whole evening because there are just too many different kinds of music from Mexico. So, but usually it's a half and half because, and this is also important in terms of audience building, we want to we have these new people coming in from whatever the community is. We've done Persia, we've done China, we've done the Middle East, we've done Korea, we've done lots of different places. But we have these new people coming in, and so we try on the concert to also do something from the canon, from the standard rep, so that they hear what a symphony orchestra normally does in case they want to come back and see one of those concerts. So it's not like we expect all of them to suddenly become subscribers, but each time we do one of these concerts, we pick off a few people and our audience becomes that much more diverse. So that's the idea. You do, and also you guerrilla market to that community, which generally isn't paying attention to what a symphony orchestra does because it hasn't paid any attention back to them. So we guerrilla market to that community and figure out what's the best mechanism for getting the word out amongst those people. And so we go next year, it's Brazil. And the year after that, it'll be the Jewish diaspora. We've done the African diaspora. We're going to do the Jewish diaspora.
Awesome.
So that's that's what we're doing. We're always looking around going, who is not here? My goal, as I also said in many an interview, is to be able to stand on the podium of the Oakland Symphony and do a 360-degree spin and for it to look the same all the way around. Look, the same people on stage I see in the audience as I see, just a spin. And I will never probably be able to achieve that completely, but that's got to be the goal. This is all aspirational. A lot of the stuff we all do is aspirational.
Wow, that's awesome. And so as I'm hearing that and seeing you're really being responsive to the community, and so what you might say do in Oakland might be different from what you do in San Francisco because their geographic constituents that comprise their region might be different, or is it kind of how you're seeing like this could be orchestra dependent on which orchestra is doing it? So an orchestra in Texas might do it a little differently versus New York or Michigan.
Exactly. I think I always stress that diversity is in the eye of the beholder. If you are in Idaho or Oklahoma or Texas or Michigan at Detroit Symphony, all these places will have very different ideas about what constitutes diversity and who constitutes a diverse audience. So you have to do it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So, and one of the other things that I think is so key that you're raising is, right, historically, orchestras have been about, here is this incredible art that we can bring to you. You're not curating it, we're curating it and bringing it to you. And now this is really saying, let's have kind of more of a two-way street. Let's let our community influence what we might choose to play, what we might curate, and all of that.
Exactly. We're never going to stop playing the canon. I wouldn't give up the Brahms, Beethoven, Mahler, et cetera, for anything. But we rather broaden what the orchestra plays so that in addition to the music that we have been presenting forever, as I say, the canon, we're also being aware of what our community is listening to when they're not at our concerts, and bringing the very highest forms of those kinds of music to our stage. And in the case of Oakland, because we don't play that many concerts, we put it on our regular concerts. So you'll have half a concert that's whatever this Notes From thing is, whatever community we're talking about. And then I remember for Native America, the first half was Shostakovich 9. And so it could be, it's something from the canon and something, so that we're meeting in the middle, not just, first of all, it makes the concerts more interesting, I think, to vary what we play on our programs, but also it makes the audience for each of these musics have to come and sit together in a room. And so that's really the community building part of it. The audience for whatever music we're playing and the audience for the classical concert, we're bringing them all together and everybody's learning about everybody else. And so that in fact, in a nutshell, is what an American city should be all about. Everyone learning about everybody else.
Wow, awesome. So, to kind of switch gears a little bit, right? Separate from being just one of the leading, conductors, maestros, not only in the country and the world, you also are a conductor of color, and fortunately or unfortunately have been the first at a number of things in that role. We certainly have a number of aspiring conductors who are part of our audience, but especially conductors of color, and was just wondering, is there any kind of key advice that you would have for those who are wanting to be able to follow in your footsteps, as to here are certain key things? If you want a leadership trajectory like I have had, here are certain key things you really need to do along the way if you're going to be considered for some of these key roles.
For one thing, by the accident of being a conductor of color or being a woman or being some other group, you already have the ability to talk to people about classical music who might not otherwise listen to someone else talk about classical music. So that's part of your responsibility, is to talk to people who might not otherwise listen about classical music. And then the other thing I would say, particularly to the younger conductors, because I made countless mistakes when I was a young conductor, because young conductors, traditionally, we thought young conductors didn't know anything because they don't. And so, conductors, we knew conductors, I mean, we didn't even think about it back in the day, a conductor being of much use to anybody until they hit about 50 years old. And now, because everyone is so youth oriented, you wind up with people who are doing things before they're ready. I did so many things before I was ready. And so now one of the things I tell people is for the conductors, to really keep a lid on the repertoire you perform and the things you want to champion, so that they're unique things about you, things you want to champion, the repertoire you perform, so that you're not doing things you're not ready for. And then the thing I say for the people who are hiring conductors is that conductors of color, young conductors of any color, is you look for the potential and then stay with them while they develop, so that by the time they get to be 50, I mean, I bear no resemblance whatsoever now to the conductor I was when I was 30. In fact, I occasionally run into soloists who were soloists for me back then, and they actually will say, "Oh my God, you're a completely different conductor than you were." I'm supposed to be. I'm old now, so I actually know how to do stuff. So there's that. The business needs to have patience with young conductors, young performers, and to help them develop. But also the young conductors, young performers, figure out what your niche is, figure out what your contribution can be to the field and to the repertoire, et cetera, and then go with that and let that develop over time. I mean, I learned a lot, actually, even from being around Schulte during the years I was his assistant in Chicago, of watching him add things to his repertoire when he was quite an old man and fully developed. And there have been pieces that I have not added to my repertoire until I got to be really an adult, so that you actually know what you're doing. So I cannot stress that enough. There's no similarity between a baby conductor and an adult.
Gotcha. Well, that is great. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I always like to ask, obviously, leading orchestras, doing this work, partnering, that there's got to be some tough days with some really big challenges. And just wondering, where do you draw on for your inspiration, for the strength to be able to overcome the toughest things that we end up facing?
Always the same thing. You are carried by the music. The music will carry you through a lot of difficult times. And then you're looking both in front of you and behind you. That is, you're looking in front of you at people who have done it before. And I'm talking about orchestras, because I tell all my conducting students, no matter what age orchestra you're dealing with, their collective wisdom is greater than yours. And so you learn from them. And at the same time, you're looking behind you. Who can you bring along in the next generation, so that the field is replenished and diversified? So you have both of those things. It's much like what we were talking about earlier about repertory, that is, in your city, you're both leading and following at the same time about what you play and who should be there. So that you have to be sensitive and have your antenna out all the time in this business if you want to ever really get good at it.
Wow. Well, Michael Morgan, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
My complete pleasure. I love conversations like this, where I get to talk about stuff that I just don't get to talk about in regular sort of interviews, sort of every day.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.